Animal Land by John Hauge. Chapter 8. Elliot's new project is born. Mari awoke with the sun in her eyes. She shaded her eyes with the left paw only to find a figure hidden in the light. Ronald was back. Ronald. I couldn't wait until the next week's hunting trials. She noticed that Ronald was cleaned up compared to last night, or at least Ronald had not had a chance to get dirty yet. This time it was her that wasn't ready to go out together. I'm not ready to see anyone, let alone you. Nonsense. Comparing you to a calm, crisp spring sunrise, I cannot. You're far more beautiful and pleasant on the eyes, by a lot. It almost sounded like poetry, thought Mari. Nah, coincidence. Ronald asked, Where do you want to go? Mari replied, Where do you want to go? I wanted to go to your place so I could see you again. Now that I'm with you, I reckon any place else or no place else ought to be just fine. Mari thought she would try and keep it light and go somewhere that Ronald would probably go anyway. Dominic is speaking today. How about we go to the rally together? Ronald was surprised at Mari's choice. He paused for a moment to contemplate whether this was a trap. If he said yes, then he wasn't thinking enough about her. If he said no, then he wasn't thinking enough about Animal Land. Then he thought it the obvious. He concluded that she just wanted him to know that being with her would not have to mean staying away from Animal Land. He replied with a happy, but not too happy voice. Okay. Mari wasn't sure where Elliot was, but he wasn't an early riser. If she left now, he'd never be the wiser. Ronald managed to accidentally brush up against Mari a couple of times on the way over. As they approached the rally area, he put more of a gap between them. Ronald surveyed the crowd of animals gathered for the groundbreaking. There were many familiar faces. The young animals appeared to congregate together. The older animals also grouped together. The medical chimps and a good part of the animals recovering in the hospital area also managed to make it out for the address. It was good to see them up and on all fours, Ronald thought. I guess they all haven't forgotten how to trot. Maybe they'll be ready to help out again, he speculated to himself. Stuart was not here, but soon Charles approached and sat down next to Ronald to listen. Elliot was also there. He was sitting next to Dominic and Everett. He was surprised to see Elliot. Mari also looked surprised, Ronald observed. Dominic began. My fellow animals, the time has come to rid Animal Land of one of its biggest threats, drought. We need to pull together to take on something that even the founding animals never thought was possible. Today we start a project to build a dam across the river. Our goal? Easy water for every animal. There was cheering by all of the assembled animals except one. Ronald decided to break the cheerful mood. This would be the last chance to voice his objections. When the cheering quieted down, he spoke up. The hospital area has already slowed the rebuilding of our defenses. Our warrior animals are so fatigued that man could probably stop by and fill up his cages anytime he wants. Only man hasn't figured it out yet. How can we be able-bodied, keen-minded, and educated animals and yet still continue to postpone vital defense work to instead work on such a large, superficial project? Not wanting Dominic to be seen as critical to other animals' opinions, Everett responded. I don't need to tell this group, but I guess I need to tell Ronald. Animal Land has proven time after time that it can defeat man whenever man shows up, and defeat man again Animal Land will. I say that drought is just as much of a threat as invasion, and Animal Land needs to be prepared. Just like a sound hospital area has put more animals at work for defense, a sound water supply will continue to put more animals available for defense. Ronald closed his eyes and cringed as he waited for lightning to strike close by. Everett knew the truth about the hospital area. This is a different type of leader than my father, or any of the lions before him, Ronald quietly reflected. Charles stepped into the debate. Ronald would not be the lone voice this time. But before each invasion, we had our defenses rebuilt and ready. Ronald nodded in agreement and then buttressed Charles's statement. Ronald added, "This was the core of the founding animals' principles. This is why it took precedence over water. As my father once told me, all of the water in the world doesn't mean a thing if you don't have your freedom. Droughts are tough, but we sure got through them in the past, and we will get through them in the future. What we cannot overcome is the erection of a big top over our heads." Dominic fired back. "We've got the best fighting animals in the history of Animal Land. With these projects, we will be invincible." Ronald appreciated the compliment, but this did not counter his point. There was not an immediate cheer from the rest of the animals listening. Sensing that his last reply did not hit the mark, Dominic took another tack. "We need healthy animals to best defend Animal Land." Bernard recognized this and set us on the path towards a better future. Let him down now? We can not. A better reaction emerged from the crowd. Dominic elevated his voice over the increased crowd cheer. "We will not." "For Bernard," rang out from the crowd. Charles called out, "And if we animals are invaded by man." Sensing where this was going to lead, Dominic interrupted. "So if you are with me and you are for water for every animal, then come and sing." Dominic and Everett started. Across the water, across the desert, came the founding animals. They found harmony, they found community. In this valley with waterfalls, there were hardships, there were struggles. Way back then and even now. But we can endeavor for a better future. Listen to me, I'll tell us how. If we work together, we can measure all the fruits of new success. If the best of us helps the rest of us, all will have more, none with less. Conquered famine, conquered drought, conquered even the tyrant man. All our hardships will be comforts. If we labor like I know we can. If we build the dam, I know we can. If we build the dam, I know we can. All of the animals in Animal Land. We pledge our allegiance to our flag. When it is flying, we know it's calling. We can do it again, let no one lag. Charles decided that he had heard enough. While the rest of the animals were singing, Charles took his leave. None of the other animals noticed. By the end of the song, all of the animals had joined in. When the singing ended, Elliot came up to see Mari and in the process Ronald as well. Elliot did not seem too concerned about Mari being there with Ronald. Maybe he did not see us arrive together, thought Ronald. Elliot looked at Ronald. I think I've stressed out my vocal cords. I better have this checked out." Mari turned to Ronald. "I guess I got to go." "I understand." Mari double-stepped a bit to catch up with Elliot. It did not take long as Elliot was not moving very fast. As the two trotted off toward the hospital area, Ronald could hear Elliot say, I hope it's kiwi fruit day at the hospital." Mari looked over her shoulder at Ronald, but didn't say anything. Ronald turned back to Everett and Dominic. "I suppose now is as good a time as any to announce that I'm resigning as advisor. From now on, I'm just ordinary citizen animal, Ronald." Everett figured as much. He turned to Dominic and motioned to start the singing again. The song and singing started up again. Ronald heard the singing even as he had walked farther and farther away. The whole song from Bernard is an emotional appeal. It sounded logical, but its appeal is to this notion of all will have more, none with less. It had slipped into the middle, sandwiched between factual truths. It's the heart of the appeal. It implies equal prosperity, which just doesn't represent life on the prairie. An animal's abilities and work ethic determine the animal's prosperity. Ronald's mind switched from pondering to worry. While the other animals seemed to be happy with the current state of affairs, he could not. Invincible? The healthcare system put more animals on their bellies than on their paws. It seems hard to believe that building such a massive structure as the dam was going to change this trend. As he headed back towards home, he came across Stuart working by himself on another defense project. At least one other animal in Animal Land knew what was important. "Where's your help?" "All. At the rally, I guess. Where are the elephanets? At the rally, I guess. Where's your Mari? She went off with Elliot to the hospital area. Stuart shook his head. Lost. Out to Elliot again. Well, there are others out there. Others. That won't leave you for someone like Elliot. You're probably right, but unfortunately, she is the one. Ronald and Stuart changed subjects to something they could agree on. They talked about how to prioritize defense preparation given the prospects of fewer and fewer available animals. The two of them worked and talked side by side until the sun touched the horizon. They parted ways when the sun hid under the horizon. Omega. Everett walked through the hospital area. He needed more help organizing the work on the dam. There he found Elliot. The lay-down area even had some of Elliot's personal items there. He looked through the files and saw that Elliot had become a frequent guest almost from the beginning days of the hospital area. As a long-time beneficiary, Elliot would be loyal and certainly open to a less physical job. Everett approached Elliot. Elliot, I have a new assignment for you. Elliot looked at Everett with a puzzled look. Everett decided to spoon-feed his words to Elliot one at a time. Elliot, I have a new assignment for you. Having spent so much time in the hospital area, he couldn't remember what his original assignment was. He played along, though. I could use a new assignment. Good. I need you to pull every other animal from the defense works and put them to work on the new dam. Okay. I will set you up in Bernard's pasture area. Sensing more puzzlement, Everett repeated himself. I said you can live in Bernard's area. Still no change in Elliot's expression. Everett continued. I will see to it that you will have special food to recognize your important contribution. After a brief silence. Sounds good. Everett wasn't entirely sure that everything had sunk in. Elliot wondered why Everett wasn't leaving. The two of them looked at each other for a couple of minutes. Elliot started getting nervous. Is there something else? Everett was losing a little patience. I trust you know where the dam is being built? Elliot was glad to have a yes or no question. Yes. Then, go. Elliot jumped to attention, then scampered off. Omega. About an hour later, Elliot found Stuart. We are going to start the dam project. We need to gather up the animals and get them to begin this important work. Have. Not we animals of Animal Land always answered the call. Stuart's question was rhetorical, but Elliot tried to access his memory for an answer. Never. Mind Elliot. If Everett wants a dam, then I guess we'll build him a dam. Dominic's and Everett's timings were either very lucky or very well planned out. Neither of them struck Stuart as especially bright. In any case, the river pretty much dries up at this time of year, so now is a good time to build. Stuart got the elephants together. We'll start knocking down trees tomorrow. This made Elliot happy. He started to turn around and gather more animals, but Stuart stopped him. Elliot turned around. Do you know how to build this dam? Elliot had that same look on his face. After a few moments, he grinned. You, asking me another question that you don't want an answer for. He started to turn around again. Elliot, that was not a rhetorical question. Elliot stopped again. Stuart continued. Who? Will tell us how. Elliot looked nervous. He looked at the ground, then the sky, back to the ground, and then at the river. Then a light bulb flickered. Everett, will tell you. Tomorrow. Good. You can go now. Elliot slowly turned around and started to walk away. After looking back twice, he accelerated to his normal walking speed. Stuart looked beyond the others to a gathering of trees. The loss of eye contact caused the others to turn and see what was so interesting. A few seconds passed, and it started to sink in that the big draw was simply a collection of trees. Stuart didn't see who said it, but out came a loud call to action. All right, guys. We will make such a dam that it would make beavers blush. A few other elephants agreed loudly to this statement. Stuart jumped in to quiet them down. Tomorrow we will go after the trees. Omega. A challenge to Everett's lead came from an unusual source. Everett's daughter, Lizzie, had watched more and more animals stop working on repairing the defenses in order to spend more time waiting to see the doctor animals. I don't get this damn project or the hospital area work. Shouldn't we be working on our defenses first? Everett had crafted a response for these types of questions. He just never thought it would come from his own daughter. Lizzie was confused. Everett would set her straight. As taught in school, when the founding animals escaped from man's circus, they escaped the bars of confinement, the capricious whip of punishment, and forced labor. They came to this valley with nothing but a dream of a life with freedom. Look at our defense projects. The animal and animals got together, built them together, and then went back to their individual lives. Now, by continually contributing to the hospital area, animals can get help without having to fend for themselves. Remember the 4 laws given to us from the founding animals. Everett wasn't looking for an answer and continued by reciting the 4 laws. First, all animals must defend animal land. Second, man's nature is to enslave and eat animals. Third, survival of the fittest animals ensures survival of animal land. Fourth, let there never be limits to each animal's prosperity through work. Father, I don't get it. How do these words say that one animal has to donate his or her labor and food to other animals? I can't believe my daughter would ask such a shallow question. You sound like a feeble-minded lion. The words are pretty clear, Father. On the surface, you're right. But a true intellectual would look beyond the literal meaning of those words. This was something that Bernard had attempted to correct. We need a more caring animal land, one that looks after all animals. We camels are more compassionate than the founding animals. We show this by supporting the weaker animals. Being a compassionate animal means being the best. A pause, and then he continued. In animal land, it is a difficult life and an unequal life. The animals with the easiest path rise and hold back the weak, which are eaten. This principle is masked and propagandized in the 3rd and 4th laws. Bernard realized this and set out to level the playing field. First, by establishing medical aid, and second, by establishing ample water for all animals. The hospital area is for the weaker animals who wouldn't otherwise get much help. Shouldn't all the animals get the best medical treatment? And food, water, and living areas? Not just the strongest and fastest and most cunning? Didn't Bernard say, what's good for one animal is good for all animals? The weak animals benefit as the most able animals provide these services. Besides, there is a lot of profit to be made from providing these services. You get what you reward. If animals like us can profit by providing healthcare, free water, and other stuff, then there will be more programs for the less able animals of animal land. So you see, what's good for us is good for all the animals of animal land. I guess I see this, replied Lizzie. But when the animals work on the dam, aren't they going to end up working for you? I thought we animals were all supposed to work for ourselves and our families. They will be working for their families because their families will benefit from the dam. Lizzie knew she should understand, but it didn't seem to make sense. It must be my age, she thought to herself. So after the dam is built, we will get our water from the dam instead of going out to get it ourselves? No, not exactly. The dam will provide water for the regular animals. For us, it will be a bit different. The dam will provide money, which will allow us to buy bottled water. By money, you mean circus money? No, animal land money. What's the difference? Animal land money is used in animal land. Lizzie didn't understand this difference. She changed subjects. What is this bottled water? Dam will provide money, which will allow us to buy bottled water. It is a bottle filled with purified river water. No dirt, no color, no odor. Who cleans the water and puts it in a bottle? Man. So it's circus water? No, it's bottled water. It seems to me like the dam will give us circus money to buy circus water. No, the dam will give us animal land money that we can use to buy bottled water. Then working on the dam is not like working to get your own water? Animals will be working on the dam so that we can get this bottled water delivered to us. Everett stopped his daughter. His daughter needed to be corrected before she made the wrong conclusion. But the regular animals will get water from the dam. It will be easier for them to get the water from the dam than on their own. Everett's daughter logic wasn't altered. Lizzie responded, but dam water is not good enough water for us? Only other animals. No answer. But water from the dam should be better than the water they can get for themselves. Look, Lizzie dear, we are going to provide this water for them. That's what is important, not whether or not we will get special water as a result of the dam. That was Bernard's vision. Water for all animals. Gee, we've got much work to do on educating the young, Everett thought to himself. Omega. Everett wasn't the only father answering questions. Like Lizzie, Milton had watched more and more animals stop working on repairing the defenses in order to spend more time waiting to see the doctor animals. Milton used the start of construction on the dam project to confront his father just as Lizzie had confronted hers. Something about this hospital area just doesn't figure. The healthcare program is supposed to keep more animals working, yet every day it seems as if there are more and more animals in the hospital area. And now with the dam project, we will have even more work. Dominic had formulated his argument to counter this question. We were taught in school when the founding animals escaped man's circus, they escaped the bars of confinement, the capricious whip of punishment, and forced labor. They came to this valley with nothing but a dream of a life with freedom. Look at our defense works. We got together, built them, then we went back to our individual lives. Now by continually contributing to the hospital area, each animal can get help without having to fend for themselves. Remember the 4 laws given to us by the founding animals? Milton replied without hesitation. First, all animals must defend animal land. Second, man's nature is to enslave and eat animals. Third, survival of the fittest animals ensures survival of animal land. Fourth, let there never be limits to each animal's prosperity through work. Dominic agreed with his son's recital of the 4 laws. Yes, this is what we have learned in school up to now. Milton continued with his questioning. What doesn't figure is where exactly in these laws does it say that one animal has to donate his or her labor and food to other animals? Dominic answered quickly. It doesn't. Dominic then sat down. This was going to be a long explanation. This was something that Bernard had attempted to correct. We need a more caring animal land, one that looks after all animals. We camels are more compassionate than the founding animals, and we are showing this by supporting the weaker animals. Being a compassionate animal means being the best. An animal's life is a difficult life and an unequal life. The animals with the easiest path rise and hold back the weak, which are eaten. The weaker animals need animals like us to look after them. The principles in the 3rd and 4th laws have been confused. We are the fittest animals, and we are going to ensure the survival of animal land by creating these programs to help the weaker animals become strong. Bernard leveled the playing field by first establishing the hospital area and second, by establishing ample water for all animals. I'm confused, Dad. How exactly do the more able animals hold back the weaker ones? Aren't the weak born that way? Don't some animals just choose not to work hard? The weaker animals don't know how to work to achieve individual prosperity. To fulfill the 4th law, we provide them the type of work that will allow them to achieve the prosperity that the stronger animals already have. We have the stronger animals contribute more because their skills and ability have allowed them to achieve prosperity too easily. So getting more work from them makes it fair for all animals. We are not going to work on the dam, yet we are going to get the water. How? We, with the vision, have to remain strong in order to help the weaker animals. You get what you reward. If animals like us can benefit by providing healthcare, free water, and other stuff, then there will be more animals like us available to help the animals of animal land. I guess I see this. Milton knew he should understand, but it didn't seem to make sense. It must be my age, he thought to himself. So after the dam is built, each animal will get as much water from the dam as they would have gotten by themselves. No, they will get the environmentally friendly amount of water. We will determine the optimal amount for each animal so that all of animal land can benefit. Some animals will waste water, and we can't have that. We will maximize the return on labor for the animals working on the dam by planning the correct amount of water to distribute to each of them. So we will have our water amounts calculated out? Who will do this? We will create a special committee to determine the optimal water needs of each animal in Animal Land. But don't worry, us compassionate camels will get plenty of water. Then working on the dam is not like working to get your own water? Some animals will work more on the dam and receive less water than they could have gotten for themselves, and animals like us will receive more water despite not working on the dam. Dominic was getting a bit frustrated. But we will provide the regular animals with water from the dam. It will be easier for them to get it from the dam than on their own, and they will get the right amount. Milton was trying to follow. Like, more during drought and less during rainy season. Look, son, we are going to provide this water for them. That's what is important, not how much or how little. These animals need our help. That was Bernard's vision. Water for all animals. Boy, we've got our work cut out for us on educating the young, Dominic thought to himself. Omega. Stuart was hard at work when Elliot stopped by. The horses had come over to help drag the trees the elephants had knocked over to the riverbank. Elliot was directing activities. We will also need some small rocks gathered. There are some small rocks farther downriver after we get past this narrow part. We are going to build a special, more permanent dam right behind yours. There was a small grumbling amongst the group of listeners. Elliot thought he would hear the grumbling after the hauling the rocks comment, not at this point. It was common knowledge that Elliot wasn't the shiniest stone in the quarry. Stuart pondered the directive. There was a time when the strongest animals set the direction. But Stuart looked at the bright side. At least Elliot had finally managed to get out of the hospital area. All wanted to make sure Elliot wasn't confused. One of the other elephants, Vincent, spoke first. Tell us why we need to build 2 dams? This seemed like a fair question, Elliot thought. Why do we need to build 2 dams? Why do we need to build 2 dams? He asked himself again. I know the answer is inside my head somewhere. The confidence of the other animals started to wane as Elliot started pacing back and forth. As the other animals looked on, it soon became obvious he was mouthing Vincent's question as he paced. Stuart decided to sit. Might as well call this a break, he thought to himself. Elliot slowed his pacing as his mind called on all of his body's resources. It probably had to do with the need for the small rocks. Elliot thought some more. Maybe it isn't important that the other animals know. He was in charge, and he could just say, do it. He looked at the other animals to get a sense of their reaction to such a reply. With each scan of the group, the faces appeared to be getting more anxious. Maybe he should just finish what he came here to tell Stuart and the others. That there would also be a delivery of white powder. Yes, the white powder. The answer helped free up resources in his body, and he moved toward the group. We will be using white powder to make this dam permanent. To make the white powder work, we cannot have any water running through the river. Therefore, 2 dams. One to allow us to build the other. Stuart got back up on his legs. You know how to make this white powder work? Elliot replied with an enthusiastic, yes. Stuart wasn't overly reassured, but he had heard enough. Okay, guys, let's get moving. Unlike when Elliot spoke, there was no grumbling, and the animals gathered themselves up to begin the tasks at hand to erect the first dam. Omega. Where's Ronald? There were many animals asking that question. Some remember hearing him challenge Everett and Dominic for leader, but thought it was just talk. Ronald had always attended every political meeting. There was only one animal who had the answer. The dates at the hunting trials were just a start. The two started seeing each other daily. The more they got to know each other, the more they found things in common to do. Today, they decided to make the climb up the hill, the same hill that Bernard looked down at Animal Land from and had his vision. When they got to an obvious clearing, Mari looked out over Animal Land first. Ronald was still looking at Mari. Mari turned back to Ronald. Such a beautiful view. Come and see. Ronald slowly joined her. Now you know what it feels like to see you each day. Ronald, you never seem to stop. Ronald turned to look out over the scenery as well. Mari commented again. I haven't been up here for the longest time. Not even with Elliot? No, Elliot never wanted to make the climb. Besides, usually there are always a bunch of young, macho, lions and tigers trying to show each other up. They would race up the hill and run over Elliot. Well, I reckon I was once one of those cubs back in the day. But you turned out different. How so? I think you know that you are a bit different. Ronald wasn't sure where Mari's inquiry was leading. Different than Elliot, but not so different from the others. Ronald wasn't getting it, thought Mari. Elliot and you see individual lionesses, not just one of many. Ronald thought to himself, not so different from Elliot. Ronald wasn't happy being branded as equal to Elliot in any fashion. But it was true that both of us saw something special in Mari, continued Ronald's thought process. So I guess I am similar to Elliot in that respect. I do think you are a very special lioness, unlike any of the others. Mari turned her head back to look at the view. Ronald moved a bit closer together. The very tips of his fur could now touch the very tips of Mari's fur if the wind was just right. They were side by side facing the valley below. The view was as spectacular as Mari had said earlier, Ronald noted. The green rolling hills to the right and yellow grassy lands to the left. Man's territory was conveniently behind them, out of view. The riverbed passes through animal land and then disappears into the horizon. Everything was picturesque except for a clearing starting to take shape near the dam site and the hospital area. Ronald didn't feel that he was any different than the other lions. All he wanted to do after the war was to settle down and enjoy the peace. A vision of the future filled his head. Ronald imagined how wonderful a life with Mari could be. Here he was in the right place, with the right lioness and the right time. Ronald turned to Mari. She was also looking at the view. He wondered if she was thinking the same thoughts as him. Ronald raised his paw to put it on Mari's paw. He could see a shimmer in his paw. It visibly vibrated in a random pattern. His heart rate dramatically increased as well. Despite these odd symptoms, he put his paw on Mari's paw and, in the process, caught her attention. There was a pause. When she turned to look at him, their faces were now extremely close. His whiskers detected her whiskers. Rather than move back away, he went for it. The two kissed for the very first time on the bluff overlooking Animal Land. Mari, I could spend the rest of my life searching, but never experience such a wonderful moment as what just happened. Let's try it one more time just to make sure. They kissed again, and while special, it will never be the same as the first kiss. Will you be my life's mate? I will. Omega. Back at the dam site, Stuart looked at the construction in progress. We will need to arrange the branches in a series of boxes across the span, he thought. Stuart assembled the lead animals. We will need something to hold the white powder liquid in. I don't think mud will work because once this row is completed, we will need to remove the branches and reassemble for another row. Mud will be too difficult to handle. There was much discussion. Many did not share Stuart's assertion that the mud would be too difficult to handle. Different ideas were brought up and subsequently shot down. During the discussion, a small tiger cub wandered in and started playing on the box squares. He hopped inside. Nobody can see me, he thought. Then, pretending a prey was walking past, he sprung out of the box and pounced. This is too much fun, he thought to himself. We need to get some of these back at the den. As he sat inside the box, the voices of Stuart and the other animals disturbed the serenity of the box. He started to listen. Something to hold liquid? I know what we can use, he thought to himself. What about large leaves? Stuart turned to find the tiger cub seemingly come from nowhere as he sprang out of the box and onto the riverbank where the discussion was taking place. Leaves? Yes, leaves. Once I was chasing a bird and followed it up into a tree. The bird flew away, and I was stuck up there. I cried out for help, but no one heard. I ended up spending the night in the tree. I was getting thirsty and saw that the leaves were holding some water in them. These were big leaves. I could put my whole face in them to get water. Really, said Stuart. Where? Were these trees? On the east side of the prairie. There is a patch, actually somewhat near the river. I can show you. Ronald, you, go with this young cub. Ronald waited for the young tiger cub to come up to him and lead the way. As the cub approached, Ronald thought he recognized him. Before responding to Stuart's request, he wanted to verify his identity. "You're Kenneth's cub, Artemis?" "That's right," responded the cub. "Glad to finally meet you, Artemis. I'm Ronald. Show me these big leaves." However, before Ronald and Artemis could set off, a question was called out by a voice behind Stuart. "You didn't finish the story. How did you get down?" "Oh, the next day the sun came up, and again, still no one heard my cries for help. Pretty soon I had drank all of the water from the leaves. I was getting pretty thirsty again." Stuart started fidgeting. He wanted to get back to work, but was drawn into the story. He looked around, and other animals were also patiently waiting for the next words to come out of the Artemis's mouth. Artemis was somewhat flattered by the attention. His fellow cubs were snickering about him getting stuck in the tree. The adults were not. They saw something different in his story. The same voice which asked to continue the story called out again. "So, what did you do?" Artemis could not place a face with the voice, so he finished the story looking at all of the animals without addressing any particular one directly. "Well, I was getting pretty desperate. First I thought, why hasn't anyone come looking for me? Then I thought, why didn't anyone tell me not to climb trees? Then I remembered my parents had told me not to climb trees. In any case, I thought someone would come to rescue me if I just waited long enough. Every time I'm out playing, it seems I bother some adult, but now there were none to be found. Surely my parents would be out looking for me. But then I remembered." Ronald interrupted Artemis. "Then you remembered that your parents probably were too busy with defense work to notice your absence." Ronald knew that Artemis's folks were pretty dedicated to defense building. They've been working on the South End almost nonstop since arriving at Animal Land a couple of months ago. "That's right, Mr. Ronald. I highly doubt they were aware of my situation." The mystery voice didn't want him to get off track. "What did you do?" Artemis replied. "Well, I didn't want to spend another night in the tree. That much was for sure. I was already mighty hungry when I went up into the tree chasing that bird. Food was on the ground, and if I was to get back down, it would be up to me to do it on my own. I worked my way to the lowest branch and looked down. Hunger won over fear, and I moved down the trunk. I got a third of the way down, and then the bark let go, and I fell the rest of the way. It wasn't pretty, but I was down." The animal of the voice added, "Most importantly, you got down on your own, without anyone's help." "So," the voice continued, "I'm not so sure that this will always be true." "Maybe," replied Artemis. Artemis finally saw that there was a young camel behind the voice. He directed the rest of his reply to that animal. "After I got down out of the tree, I told my story to some of my friends. One of my friends said he was going to ask his father to see if Dominic would put up warning signs on all of the trees saying, 'Don't climb.' Many laughs came out, and the Artemis moved his head side to side to match up all of the laughs with faces. I guess it was kind of funny looking back at it. My dad always told me I would be sorry if I ever climbed up a tree, but I didn't believe him." Well, unfortunately, as often is the case, personal experience is a better teacher than recited wisdom, concluded the young camel. Charles joined Ronald. Ronald introduced Charles to Artemis and Artemis to Charles. Then, the three of them finally set off for the big leaves. "Ronald, was that young camel praising me or criticizing me?" Ronald gave a half of a laugh. He knew that the young camel was Milton, who was well known to have an inquisitive mind. That young camel's name is Milton, and knowing Milton, he was probably doing both. Dominic is his father, and he's lucky he wasn't here to hear this. Just be thankful that learning your lesson the hard way did not cause any lasting effects. This didn't help Artemis's understanding. Maybe Charles would be less cryptic, he thought. "I'm not sure I follow." Artemis turned his head towards Charles. "What is Ronald trying to tell me?" Charles gave Artemis his understanding of Ronald's words. "The young can bounce back. When you're older, the jump is higher, and for many too high." "I still don't get it." Ronald knew that both his and Charles's replies had a double meaning that may be too much for this young tiger cub to understand. One of the meanings was a commentary on the current politics of Animal Land. Ronald didn't want to try to explain. Instead, he wanted to wrap up the conversation with a compliment. Never you worry about it, partner. Stuart doesn't waste his time for just any cub. Be flattered that even Stuart was so interested in your story that he delayed returning to work on the dam to hear it. Now let's find your big leaf tree. Charles agreed and added, but first, we will need some more tree climbing help. While I can climb and gather leaves, I am just one chimp. Ronald had an idea of where to find a lot of able-bodied animals. Let's head back to the hospital area. The others, inferring Ronald's thinking, followed. Omega. Time was running out as the river would start to rise again in the spring. Pretty soon all efforts to work on defenses were scrapped and more animals were brought in to help. Hunting was abandoned, and the rest of the camels even came out to help. Even with the extra animals, the work was slow. This was not just a small creek, but a fairly large river, one capable of being seen from up on the bluff on the far side of Animal Land. Elliot came down to inspect the progress. He had a message for the animals. He knew what the message was before he came down, but he went through a formal inspection of the dam construction site for show. In front of the dam, water had started to collect. It was ankle deep. As Stuart and Vincent and some of the other animals looked on, he stopped in the middle of the puddled water in front of the dam. Looking down at his paws, now underwater, he spoke. Gentle animals, we, must work faster if we are going to beat the rising river. The message was not unexpected. To, get this done, Dominic and Everett have decided that we will also work continuously. We, will no longer be able to have the one day of rest each week. The tone of Elliot was probably more offensive than the thought of having to do more work. Elliot made it sound like only he was insightful enough to figure out that the dam was at risk of being washed away. Stuart spoke, even. When the founding animals were living in the circus, man would allow them a day of rest each week. Vincent added to the conversation with the old circus slogan, Tuesday. Rest Tuesday day, work Tuesday morrow. There will be rest once we finish the dam. There was an unexpected reply followed Elliot's words. Are you sure there, partner? Because we still haven't finished the defenses. Even though the voice was somewhat distant, Elliot thought it sounded familiar. Coming down the riverbank with a load of branches were Charles and Ronald. Elliot eventually attributed the remark to Ronald and replied to him. Yes, but we can do that anytime. Ronald didn't let Elliot get away with such an idealistic answer. Unless man attacks. And if man does attack now, we have precious little food stores to keep our bellies quiet during the war. But, man won't attack now. Dominic, Everett have assured us of this. Ronald laughed at the notion. Probably more likely, man wouldn't attack until after the dam is completed. We'll all be a fine mess of tired and worn-out animals by then. Easy pickings. Stuart and Vincent looked over the places and started to form a plan to start lining the boxes with leaves. Then the white powder mix could be added. The chimpanzees will put the powder in the leaf-lined boxes, and the elephants would add the water from their trunks. The horses and camels would stir with their legs. Stuart and Vincent had moved away from the rest of the gathering to avoid Elliot, but even as they planned the work, they could hear Elliot's voice in the distance. More mumbo, jumbo, they both thought at the same time quietly. When, the dam is finished, we will have virtually unlimited water supply to all animals. More, animal baths. More water sports for the young. No, fighting other scavenger animals for water. The, next step is to put up permanent walls around the boundaries of Animal Land. With, the water, we will not need to venture beyond Animal Land in search of water. Stuart looked at Vincent. Permanent walls? Vincent asked Stuart rhetorically. Stuart knew that it wasn't too long ago that the dam was being touted as the last project. He understood the real question and asked Vincent. When? Did anything spoken by Dominic or Everett actually turn out to be true? Vincent answered with a sarcastic tone. You mean beyond the assertion that there will be hardships and there will be struggles? Elliot scurried away to avoid being asked the same question. Omega. To reinforce the urgency of completing the work, even Everett showed up for the first time. Everett had said that all of the white powder had to be mixed at once. Even the doctor chimpanzees left the hospital area to help. The females also showed up to work. Ronald was surprised to see that Mari was among the female volunteers to help out. Why you? You're spending more and more time here and not with me. It just seems to make more sense that we postpone our plans until this project is finished. Ronald thought to himself that she was probably right. But what happened to going on with one's life after the war? First we sacrificed to fight the war, and now we sacrifice to do this huge project. When will there be the time of peace and rest like my dad had when I was a cub? It wasn't fair. My lovely mate-to-be now a manual laborer. It wasn't fair. Ronald didn't dwell on Mari being there, but instead took advantage of Everett being there to ask a question that had been nagging at him since the announcement of the dam project. Everett, how did you know about how to use this white powder? It's a long story. I'll have Elliot explain. No. Vincent and Ronald replied in a nice harmonic sound as both shouted at the same time. No thanks. Ronald and Mari worked together to mix the white powder. It quickly became too thick to mix, and the two would go to the river to rinse off their front legs. They would return and start a new section. It was not the way he envisioned starting his new life with Mari. The same could be said for Mari. It was not the way she envisioned starting her new life with Ronald. At least I'm spending more time with him, she rationalized. But she still had to share him with Stuart. As Ronald watched the process, he wondered about the white powder. He commented to Stuart, I doubt we could have done this without the white powder. Stuart replied, I guess we were just lucky that Elliot found it. I thought Margaret found it. Stuart's eyes darted up to the sky and then back at Ronald. What difference does it make? Omega. That afternoon, Elliot returned. He soon found Mari at work on the dam. Mari, you, don't have to do this. You're, with me. Mari looked at Ronald, who had obviously heard the statement. She knew it would come to this at some point. Truth is she had already decided in her heart long ago. Elliot, I'm afraid I have to talk to you in private. Elliot gave a puzzled look to Ronald. Mari, is, there something going on between you and Ronald? Mari moved away and out to the perimeter of the work area. Elliot followed. This time Ronald stayed put and simply watched from afar. When Mari thought she had enough distance between the two of them and her and the rest of the animals, she stopped and turned to face Elliot. Elliot, you and I have been good friends, but I just don't see you in the same way as I see Ronald. So, you want to be just one of the harem lionesses blindly following the warrior cats who think they are such hot stuff? No, Ronald is different. He lets me be me. I, don't understand. What, I do understand is that I took a prairie lioness and made her the best-looking lioness in all of Animal Land. And, now Ronald has discovered this and now, you are leaving me. No, it's not like that. I'm, becoming a very important lion in Animal Land. You could be the first lioness of Animal Land. Sorry, Elliot, but I just don't feel the same about you anymore. So, you'd rather be digging dirt and mixing white powder like one of the regular animals? Goodbye, Elliot. Mari went back to work. Ronald wanted to say something, but after looking at her expression, he decided that nothing further needed to be said. She had made her choice. Stuart called him from over the far side of the construction site. Ronald, over here. As Ronald approached, he saw what Stuart saw. The approaching animals included Dominic and Margaret. It was actually Dominic's first visit. Amazing. Margaret and Dominic were bringing a shipment of rations for the working animals on the dam. Well, not exactly. They had one of Margaret's horses bringing the rations. It was more like the two accompanied the rations. Stuart softly warned Ronald, keep a lookout for flying pigs and friendly humans. Dominic walked alongside the horse. Behind the horse was a log sled filled with food. Let's see what we've got for the working animals, Dominic said to himself. The sled contained dried meat and vegetables with some fruits scattered on top. Dominic helped himself to the fruit. He was going to have just one, but the walk out to the dam site turned out to be a bit farther than he thought. He could see the dam site and some animals on the perimeter awaiting the food. He moved ahead of the sled and led it the rest of the way. Ahoy, my fellow animals. We have some good food for everyone. Come on over. The other animals understood the drill and had already started arriving. Stuart looked over the sled and the food on it. Stuart wasn't much for complaining, but since Dominic actually got off of his belly to see the dam, it seemed only appropriate to bring up the lack of fruit to reward the fruits of his labor. What is this? Margaret replied, more vegetables. What? About the peanuts and apples? It's been weeks since we've had these. Dominic rubbed his tongue through his teeth, being careful not to show his teeth to Stuart. He didn't feel any residual apple skins. He then spoke, we have the grasses and vegetables you need for your nutrition. Peanuts and apples are just junk food. I think I know what I'd like to eat, and this ain't it. Margaret was unaffected by the rebuke and defended her actions. Since I've been bringing food, we have had healthy animals, and not one animal has had to leave and go to the hospital area during construction on the dam. Stuart thought about it. Stuart wasn't sure that the cause and effect were appropriately matched up. But with Elliot as supervisor and not working, this eliminated at least one potential injury case. Did it occur to you, my mare, that the only animals remaining are those with a work ethic? Dominic took a bit offense to this, but wasn't going to criticize Stuart. Before we get too judgmental, just remember that even the great Stuart may get sick one day. That will be the day, replied Stuart. Ronald joined Stuart in the conversation. The rest of the animals chose to eat rather than talk. What about this fence that Elliot mentioned earlier? Dominic replied quickly. He sounded dismissive. We don't need to be worrying about that now. We need this dam built. For now, we need to focus our complete attention on the dam. Stuart chalked up Dominic's tone to the fact that nothing was important until he determined that it should be important. Dominic saw Elliot in the distance and left Stuart behind to remind Elliot of who determines the timing of such announcements. Dominic saw Elliot looking at his reflection in a puddle of water in front of the dam. Elliot, you idiot. Will you just stick to the script? What, do you mean? I'll announce the wall project when the time is right. Elliot realized the error. Right. I messed up. No, more wall talk until after. Dominic nodded. Technically, it was he who messed up by even telling Elliot. Although he thought to himself, who would have thought Elliot would remember after being told only once? Omega. The lead doctor chimpanzee, Eli, took a break from his work in the hospital area to help the camel cause. He used his skilled hands to write the words of Bernard's vision speech under the statue of Bernard. He read through it again to proofread. The words were still as inspirational today as they were then. Eli, nice work, Dominic said with a smile that could motivate apes to swim, or in this case, a chimpanzee to chisel. We have taken one more step forward in the advancement of animal land. Eli acknowledged the statement with a matching smile. He was proud of the hospital area and proud to be working with the camels. It was work much more rewarding than to toil as a farmer in the orchards of his father, Charles. The writing task was a labor of love to show the leader camels his appreciation for giving him such rewarding work. Dominic continued the lesson. We have time as our ally. Over time, the convictions and beliefs of all animals in animal land will reflect the words you've chiseled here today. Omega. As Ronald walked the path to Mar-E's den, he realized that it had been quite some time since he had been there. It seemed as they were ready to begin a life together when the dam project started up. Ronald, Stuart, and the core working animals had been living at the dam project site. Ronald hadn't seen Mari at night for quite some time. They saw each other while working on the dam during the day, but that wasn't the same thing. Tonight, Ronald skipped the night work and went to see Mari. On the way over, it occurred to him that although they were together, he had yet to build a den for the two of them. So, Mari stayed at her place next to her parents. Why, look who's here. Hello, Mari. Surprised to see me? Well, a little puzzled. I thought I was dating a lion who wanted to spend the rest of his life with me as soon as possible. Then I never saw him again. Mari, That's not quite fair. That may be true. I actually did start to see when I actually started working on the dam myself. Ronald defended his actions. Not in a mean way, but more by just listing the facts impartially. We have to get this done before the start of spring. What we had to do is start a family before winter. Now we've missed out on this. There will always be time for this. Mari didn't believe him. Not that this was untrue, but more based on Ronald's inability to stay away from politics and animal land projects. I hear there is a new project coming. Ronald had been too busy working on the current project to build the dam to worry about a new project. Would not surprise me. Mari turned away from Ronald and put her paw on her forehead as if to be looking way off in the distance. So I'll be waiting for this new one to finish as well? Look, there is a party tonight to celebrate the completion of the white powder phase of building the dam. This means that it is nearly done. Mari turned back at him. I see. Ronald continued. And I wanted to know if you would see fit to accompany me to it. I haven't seen hide nor hair of you after dusk for months. I had to work on the dam to see you during the day. I separated from Elliot and still no change. It is my duty. I am Alice Starr's son. I have a responsibility to support Animal Land. There was once a lion who thought I was the most important animal in his life. Where's that lion? He's still here. Are you sure? Mari asked, but she was sure. She knew Ronald was true to her. But Ronald was also true to Animal Land. Animal Land occupied a larger place in Ronald's heart than she did. It was selfish, but she wanted more of Ronald's attention. She had turned down a lot of other lions besides Elliot. The celebration is going to be a lot of fun. Fermented grapes, the hyena toss, an Everett lookalike contest. Mari had a different idea. How about you skip this party and spend it with me? The two of us, together again, like before. There were good reasons to do both. This would be a well-deserved party, probably the biggest event since the Victory Parade. It would be a time to visit everyone beyond a work setting. On the other hand, there is Mari. Perhaps her mood would improve as the night progressed, or maybe not. Let's go to the party, have some fun, and then come back and talk about our future. Mari wasn't surprised, just disappointed. Have a good time. Say hi to Stuart for me. With that, Mari stormed off. Ronald thought about chasing her, but then decided against it. In the distance, he could hear the drums beating. The party was starting, and he was standing alone on the other side of the river. The sounds grew stronger and stronger the closer he got to the party site. As he reached the clearing, it was clear that things had already started. Stuart was holding court like it was the night of the Victory Parade all over again. There were many lionesses around the clearing. They all were looking very pretty. Hard to believe that these were the same drab, mud-covered cats that had been working on the dam. Over. Here, my fine lion friend. Stuart, nice soiree you've got here. It's a nice party also. Where is Mari? Mari says hi. She's not going to be able to make it. How? Very sorry for her. But it doesn't have to be sorry for you. Ronald heard this before, but somehow it sounded different this time. This might help Ronald. In the center of the clearing was essentially a setup very similar to what was used to pour the white powder blocks. Only this time it was filled with a dark liquid. Ronald's nose confirmed his suspicion. It was fermented grapes. It's time to celebrate. Ronald took a drink. It was sweet like fruit, but had a slight burning sensation to his throat. Nice juice. Drink. Quick. It is almost time. One of the lionesses came up to take a drink. Despite the large size of the well, she seemed to be standing right on top of him. So close, he could feel her face with his whiskers and feel her whiskers with his face. This didn't draw the usual response to create some distance. In fact, he slowed his drinking to prolong the moment. I'm Stefani. I'm Ronald. Yes, I know. Are you going to participate in the hyena toss? Not this time. I think Stuart has it again this year. We'll see. I've got a good viewpoint. Want to watch with me? He knew he shouldn't, but he did anyway. Omega. A circle of tigers corralled the hyenas. The circle moved forward, forcing those to be tossed towards those that will do the tossing. Vincent, an elephant, was first up and was seen as the best challenger to Stuart. Vincent looked down on the group. There was some movement as each hyena jockeyed for a position furthest from Vincent. With a raising of his trunk, the squeals of the hyenas increased as if Vincent was a maestro and the hyenas were his orchestra. This time it was the party onlookers laughing as they watched this futile attempt towards avoiding the inevitable. With a swift move, one was plucked from the rest. In the dirt, a line was drawn marking the throwing point. Vincent moved up to the line. Out at the other end were the chimpanzees ready to mark the spot. With a waving of the tails, the signal was given for the first throw of the night. Vincent gave the chimps his profile, and he began a wide clockwise swirling motion. Around and around the hyena went until Vincent felt a loosening of his grip. This was the signal to release. A cheer came out of the assemblage of partygoers. The cheer died down quickly to allow the sound of the plunk to fill each of the spectators' ears. Then the cheer came back just as quickly. One of the chimps came back to reveal the count. 16 yards for Vincent, a tremendous showing. The next candidate was a tiger. The tigers opened up the ring for one of their own, who promptly grabbed one by the back of the neck. Care was taken not to break anything before it was time. The tiger waded back beyond the lines. A tiger delivery used a running start. Anticipation grew as the tiger waited for the signal from the chimpanzees. A quick leap forward started the cheering. As he approached the line, he flung his head back and released. The hyena went airborne and plopped short of Vincent's mark. This didn't diminish the cheering, as half the joy was seeing the hyenas get what they deserved. 12 yards for the tiger. Stuart approached. He was an old pro at this game. He quickly picked a hyena out of the group, not giving it a chance to try and dodge the trunk. A small chant from the elephantettes started to emerge. Stuart! 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 Stuart's approach began with a similar stance as Vincent, but rather than a whirling motion, it was more of a swaying motion. Like a kid on a playground swing, the hyena moved up and down along a U-shaped path. The chimps gave the signal and Stuart let it go. The hyena landed flat on his head after completing 3 airborne somersaults. The cheering waned a bit as the measurement took extra time. Finally, the chimp walked back in silence. He looked at Stuart, then looked at the other animals. 17 yards. Yells of congratulations were abound as Stuart once again proved he had what it took. But the celebration was tempered by one last entrant. A soft buzz of whispering came over the assembled animals as Milton approached. "I'd like to give it a try." The chimps went back to get ready for another throw. The hyena choice was getting limited. He grabbed one with a bite behind the neck, leaving only 3 remaining. The buzz of the new challenger moved swiftly through the ranks. Pretty soon, every animal had positioned themselves for a view. Even animals that had never been interested in the sport wanted to see what the young camel could do. The increased number of watching eyes went unnoticed by Milton. All of his senses were focused on the task at hand. His eyes were moving back and forth from the throwing line to the chimps down at the end of the field. His ears listening to the gusts of the wind. His nose smelling hyena breath. His teeth feeling the squirming varmint. He stopped short of the line. In his mind, he envisioned his delivery. After 3 mental rehearsals, he was ready. He adjusted his starting point by moving backwards 1.5 steps. Moving in a slow circle, he rotates forward, spinning faster and faster until he reaches the line, and then while in full rotation, he releases the hyena, sending it far down the field. The sound of the splat was followed by the loudest cheers of the evening. By the crowd's reaction, the mark is going to be close. 18 yards. It was hard to hear over the cheering, but the chimp continued. Not since Alistar's win over Bernard has a first-time tosser ever won this event. It was a regular who's who among the animals congratulating Milton. Ronald looked on in amazement. This was the second time the young camel surprised him. A jubilant Stefani kissed Ronald to commemorate the event. Ronald's mind was still on how this camel had won and didn't notice. A second kiss finally caught his attention. "Come on, Ronald. Let's go find a place to watch the moon peek out of the clouds." Ronald wasn't all that interested in moon watching. But the Everett impression contest is coming up. Leave the politics behind for once. Let's watch the moon. Maybe even talk about us. Despite his better judgment, Ronald left with the lioness. He had wanted to spend the evening with Mari, but this was not meant to be. Maybe he just wasn't worthy for such a special lioness as her, he thought. He recognized the one leading him to the hilly section west of the field. Stefani had been one of the many chasing him and the other war lions after the parade. Many had landed a warrior cat, but evidently she had not. She was a fine-looking lioness. She wouldn't give him as much of a hard time as Mari. There was something to be said for and against this quality. Stefani could see that Ronald's attention was elsewhere. She called him by name to get his attention. Ronald. When he turned to face her, she asked, "How about over here?" "Sure, Stefani. I reckon that'll be fine. Isn't the moon beautiful tonight?" Ronald looked up at the moon and studied it for a moment. After some deliberation, he answered, "Yes, I reckon that it is. But sometimes it isn't very friendly. The moon hides behind the clouds, making us wait to see it again. The moon teases us. We get used to seeing its beauty, then it ducks away." "Yes, I reckon it does that. But I don't think the moon controls the destiny of the clouds." "I'm not so sure. The moon dominates the skies much more so than the clouds." "Perhaps. But it is the clouds that make the rains come and turn Animal Land green. The moon is just a pleasant distraction from the clouds. A distraction that Animal Land cannot tolerate for very long as we need the rain." Ronald felt her paw on his and the brush of a whisker. Mari was the last to be this close to him, but that had been before the dam. So long ago. There was a natural desire to simply settle down and resume the life of other cats. The choice was so obvious, but so difficult. He wasn't just any cat. His mate would not be just any cat. He had been fighting the moon ever since the war ended. Why let this moon win tonight? As pleasant as that sounded, his passion was for the clouds, for Animal Land. "Sorry, Stefani. I've got to resume my defense work tomorrow." Omega. Ronald walked back towards the dam. As he came up to it, he walked the length of the dam. It had been a big effort, but it was finally finished except for the piping part. Animal Land got lucky and that man did not attack while the dam was under construction. In the past, man was very predictable about his attacks on Animal Land. Usually, this long after the last war, there were sightings of man looking over our defenses as part of a plan for the next war. Surely man hasn't left for good? Next to the dam was an abandoned defensive earthwork. This wasn't the only defensive position that was left unprepared in order to build the dam. The hospital area was depleted of its food stocks in order to pull more animals off of hunting and gathering and into building the dam. Ronald kept walking until he reached his father's den and fell asleep. Omega. The next morning, Ronald awoke to familiar surroundings. The usual accompaniments were scattered around. In an earlier time, he would needle his father about the items. Today, it was time for some serious talk. "Dad, there are fewer and fewer animals working. Yet no one wants to speak out against Everett and Dominic's projects." "Son, over the years, many of our younger animals have challenged the ways of their elders," began Alice Starr. "Even I have challenged." "You have." After so many years, Ronald did not think that his dad could ever surprise him again. "Yes, there was a time, but I obeyed my parents and saw the wisdom of my parents as I grew older. Your grandfather had really sharp teeth, and that also helped. Anyways, the 4 laws are not something that came from one animal's mind. They represent generations of animal wisdom passed down from fathers to sons, repeated over and over. Each son will challenge the wisdom of one or all of them only to figure out for himself that they are perfect as written. In the end, the animals most critical of the 4 laws pass along the 4 laws to their sons with just as firm conviction as their fathers had before them. Yet Everett and Dominic seem to be aiming to adapt the 4 laws to their views. Once the older animals have passed, will the original message of the 4 laws survive? I'm sure this challenge will pass and things will return to the way they were. Ronald did not feel the same sureness in Alice Starr's voice as he did when Alice Starr was telling him other stories of the past. Alice Starr continued, Everett and Dominic look at things differently. They're leaf eaters. They don't have to hunt for their supper. It is all around them. It's hard for them to picture what it was like in the old days of the man's circus with no liberty. Liberty has always been around them like the leaves in the trees. For us lions, liberty has always been something that needed to be hunted regularly, like our next supper. It is something we have to plan for. It is something we have to be physically fit for. We need to be ready to meet the challenge if we are to keep our liberty. This all made sense to Ronald, but he was a lion, a meat eater. Dad, Everett is interpreting the four laws to show that they justify the labor of some animals of Animal Land to work to provide water to every animal of Animal Land. Son, Everett is adulterating the meaning of the four laws because that kind of mandate is simply not there. Because changing the words is too radical. Changing the words preserves the meaning of each word. Therefore, the original wisdom of the founding animals is preserved. Changing the meaning of the words makes all of their projects part of what the founding animals wanted. Ronald nodded that he was understanding his father's logic. That legitimizes these changes. Right, son? Providing water for every animal is popular because we all drink water every day. But it is not what the founding animals wanted. Only the first of the four laws require labor from some animals to help others. This is because it is the most important of the four laws. Without the first, the other three are not possible. Unfortunately, maintaining a strong defense really has no apparent benefit to some animals, especially during a time of unprecedented peace. The stronger our defense is, the less likely Animal Land will be attacked. Right, son? The longer the time between attacks, the less important it seems to maintain a defense. New animals are born that don't remember the wars against man. Alice Starr sat down as he continued. We used to get more refugee animals who managed to escape man's circus. They were a source of great strength as the four laws were more personal to them having lived without freedom. I haven't seen many lately, but you are right. Those I've known are very patriotic. Alice Starr nodded. Father, why do you think this is? Do you think that there are less circuses, or do you think that man has been able to increase his control over the animals? Alice Starr shrugged his shoulders. I don't know. Ronald, changing subjects, asked a question about something else on his mind. Do you think we will be attacked again? Like us against the gazelles, man only attacks the weak. As our defenses weaken, man will be emboldened to attack again. It is unfortunate that we keep having to relearn these things. The founding animals are not with us anymore. Yet their legacy lives on in the story of their escape from man's circus, their journey to this land, and the teaching of the four laws which serve as the basis for governing Animal Land. Remember Ronald. Ronald waited. Alice Starr got up once again and looked at Ronald straight into his eyes. If there is one lesson you need to pass on to the next generation, it would be this one. Ronald waited some more. All of the water, all of the food, and all of the hospital services in the world don't mean a thing if you don't have a strong defense. Man can come into Animal Land and take it all away in a puff of smoke. Ronald pondered this for a bit before calling it a night. Omega. Dominic and Everett gathered all the animals together to celebrate the opening of the dam. Dominic was front and center. He never missed an opportunity to speak in front of a large crowd. We are here to celebrate this great day for Animal Land. We have done something that none of the founding animals would have ever thought possible. Water for all animals. Charles interrupted. All the more reason to get back to our primary task of defense. If man invades, he can destroy the dam. We need to immediately. Dominic cut Charles off with a suggestion that he thought would guarantee an end to this talk about defense. We all should sing to celebrate the success of the dam. Across the water, across the desert, came the founding animals. They found harmony, they found community. In this valley with waterfalls, there were hardships, there were struggles. Way back then and even now. But we can endeavor for a better future. Listen to me, I'll tell us how. If we work together, we can measure all the fruits of new success. If the best of us helps the rest of us. All will have more, none with less. Conquered famine, conquered drought, conquered even the tyrant man. All our hardships will be comforts. If we labor like I know we can. We built the dam, I know we could. We built the dam, I know we could. All of the animals in Animal Land. We pledge our allegiance to our flag. When it is flying, we know it's calling. Let's all answer, let no one lag. We built the dam, I know we could. We built the dam, I know we could. Omega. Stuart stood on top of the hill. Behind him was the dam. In front of him, beyond the horizon, was the land where man lived. The defenses were completed on this section of Animal Land. Neither could make out the words at this distance, but the insidious melody was familiar and gave away the name of the song. This area had always been the primary invasion route. At least, he thought, there was one part of Animal Land that could be defended against anything man could throw at it. There would be no fanfare like the completion of the dam. Ronald came up to join Stuart. Congratulations, Stuart. Despite the odds being against you, you've accomplished something that no other animal has been able to do. You've actually made Animal Land safer. Not. Really. It is not in one animal's ability to defend all of Animal Land. Yes, it takes two. Two. Dominic and Everett. Stuart did not laugh, but answered as if Ronald was serious. I don't think so. Stuart never did have much of a sense of humor, thought Ronald. You're missing the big dam ceremony. I don't need a celebration. I need more animal helpers. Ronald switched to his best Everett voice. I present this dam as a gift to Animal Land from Bernard. Stuart replied with his simple logic. Never. Had I had to work so hard to get such a nice gift. Ronald started to laugh. Stuart sounded so serious in his sarcasm. Stuart continued after Ronald stopped his laughing. Wasn't Bernard dead before we started the dam project? Ronald nodded. Of course he was. Animals die, but ideas live on. Stuart smiled. I wish his last idea was to build a sandcastle, not that dam. Ronald asked, What's your next project, partner? I once thought I'd settled down by now, but it's taken much longer and I'm not so young. Ronald agreed. Yes, neither of us are. Stuart went on. Now, I don't see ever having time to settle down. So much work still to do. Ronald nodded, but then caught himself. He didn't want to officially agree with Stuart's settle down, commit, because a report about his nod could find its way back to Mari. Ronald, I've been thinking. Yes. Ronald waited, but Stuart had turned back towards the dam. The singing voices in the distance had quieted, leaving only the sounds of the grass and leaves. Ronald came abreast of Stuart, both looking down on the animals assembled on the bank of the river. Is it just me? Or are the four laws slipping away? And, along with them, Animal Land as we know it. The words surprised Ronald. Coming out of the blue, Ronald did not think that politics had ever entered Stuart's mind. For an animal that had not spent much time debating the policies of Everett and Dominic, he had come to the same conclusion as Ronald. Stuart looked out on the horizon. The dam was impressive, but all he could feel is fear as the defenses were not ready for an attack by man. The main area of invasion from the last war had been rebuilt, but none of the other invasion routes have had much defense rebuilding action. Look at the other high spots. There are at least 3 other spots to worry about. Ronald looked also. Still better than 4, partner. Ronald didn't see it, but Stuart did. He looked closer. He saw something move. He had seen this shape before. It was a jeep, which meant man. Man? Where? Right there. Stuart pointed with his trunk. Man has returned. Ronald looked. He saw a pair of figures blend into the jeep. I see them, but they're leaving. The jeep disappeared as it slipped back over the hill crest. Ronald and Stuart both knew what was going to happen soon. First, the reconnaissance missions where man surveys Animal Land and looks for weaknesses. Then comes the full-scale attack. It was Ronald who said what both animals were thinking. It's starting. Ronald looked away from the sight of the fading jeep and back to the dam. He then looked at Stuart, who already knew what Ronald was going to say. Ronald said it out loud anyway. And we are not prepared.